I am Dr. S.Padmapriya speaking. I am guiding the students in their preparation for UGC NET Economics exam. I have already covered 4 lessons of Microeconomics syllabus of UGC NET Economics syllabus. That is, I have covered the theory of consumer behavior, the theory of production and cost. I have covered decision making under risk and uncertainty as well as game theory. Now I am going to move over to lesson number 5, which is dealing with market structures. There are different kinds of markets like perfect markets, imperfect markets and monopoly markets. The perfect markets can be divided into perfect markets and pure markets. And then we have 2 kinds of monopoly, simple and discriminating, and there are 3 kinds of imperfect markets like monopolistic competition, oligopoly and duopoly. Herein we are going to study in detail 4 different kinds of market structures. The first is perfect competition. What is a perfectly competitive market? It is one in which the number of buyers and sellers are very large. All are engaged in buying and selling a homogeneous product. There are no artificial restrictions. All possess perfect knowledge of market at the concerned time. The following are the conditions for the existence of perfect competition. 1. Large number of buyers and sellers, homogeneous product, absence of artificial restrictions, freedom of entry and exit of firms. Next we have perfect mobility of goods and factors, perfect knowledge of market conditions and absence of transport costs. Now in graph number 5 we find the normal equilibrium price which can be determined when the forces of supply and demand intersect. Here E is the equilibrium price and E is the equilibrium and P is the price and Q is the quantity. Now we are going to study about equilibrium price under perfect competition. Time plays a very important role in price theory. Generally, the shorter the time period, the greater will be the influence of demand on pricing. The longer the time period, the greater will be the influence of supply on the determination of prices of commodities. Now, in the following graph 5.1, we study how the long run equilibrium is formed under perfect competition. E is the point of equilibrium, where LMC, long run marginal cost curve, is equal to MR, which is marginal revenue, which is equal to AR, which is average revenue, which is equal to LAC, long run average cost, at its minimum. So you have the meeting of LMC, AR, MR and LAC. Here we see that AR and MR coincide. Monopoly. Monopoly is a market situation wherein there is only one seller of a product with barriers to entry of others. The product has no close substitutes. In the case of monopoly, the cross elasticity of demand is very high. In the case of monopoly, the firm and the industry are one and the same. So, how do we determine monopoly prices? We have to make certain assumptions like there is only one seller of a homogeneous product, there are no close substitutes, there is pure competition in the factor market, the monopolist is rational, there are many buyers, the monopolist does not charge discriminating price and there is no threat of entry from other firms and there is no restriction on the monopolist powers. So price and output determination. Prices and output, how are they determined in monopoly? It is determined by the forces of demand and supply. Since the monopolist has complete control over the supply of a product, he is known as price maker. So in perfect competition, the firm is the price taker. Whatever price is offered to him is taken by him. But in monopoly, he is the price maker. He can fix the price or he can fix the output. He cannot fix both price and output simultaneously. The demand curve faced by the monopolist is the downward sloping average revenue curve or AR curve. The corresponding marginal revenue curve lies below it. The monopolist decides the price or output based on the elasticity of demand for his product. When the demand is less elastic, the monopolist usually tries to raise the price and profit more by selling less. When the demand for the commodity is more elastic, he will reduce prices by a smaller extent and sell much more. Whatever be the nature of cost curves of the monopolist equilibrium is at the point where the marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Maximum profits are when the difference between total revenue and total cost is maximum. So monopoly price is MC into E by E minus 1. So here we must understand the difference between perfect competition and monopoly. AR and MR coincide in the case of perfect competition, whereas MR is below AR in the case of monopoly. Monopoly price is the function of marginal cost and elasticity of demand. Under graph 5.2, we can study total revenue and total cost approach. We have TR, which is total revenue curve, and TC, which is total cost curve of monopoly. We have output taken along the x-axis and price and cost taken along the y-axis. In graph 5.2, TC is total cost curve, which shows a continuous rise in total cost as output increases. TR is the total revenue curve, and whatever is the difference between TR and TC, when it is maximum, the monopolist will maximize his price and profits. Now we come to graph 5.3, which is the marginal approach. Short-run monopoly equilibrium with supernormal profits. Now we are going to study short-run monopoly equilibrium with supernormal profits. So in the short run, the monopolist can make supernormal profits. Here in this graph 5.3, we see that AR and MR curves are there. We find that short-run average cost is less than the average revenue curve or line, and therefore the monopolist is able to make a certain amount of profit. So he has BC, PA, that entire rectangle BC, PA is the supernormal profits that the monopolist is able to make. Now, in the above graph, SAC is the short-run average cost curve and SMC is the short-run marginal cost curve. AVC is the average variable cost curve. D is the demand or revenue curve, and the corresponding MR revenue curve is below it. E is the short-run monopoly equilibrium, where SMC curve cuts the MR curve from below. The monopolist sells OM output at MP price. So we have supernormal monopoly profits. The next graph shows the normal profits of the monopolist when SAC curve is tangential at point P to the AR curve, that is average revenue curve. So you here in the case of normal profits under short run, you have SAC curve which is tangential to AR curve at point P. SMC curve cuts the SAC curve at the minimum point of SAC curve. So SMC curve is cutting the SAC curve at its minimum. So we are able to see that. Now we go on to the concept of long run monopoly equilibrium, where we have in graph 5.5 we have MR curve which is below AR curve, or marginal revenue curve is below average revenue curve. You have long run average cost curve which is U-shaped, and then we have LMC curve which is long run marginal cost curve. We have SAC which is short run average cost curve, and we have SMC which is short run marginal cost curve. So we find that there are many points to be noted here, like P, A, E and L. Price and cost is taken along y-axis and output is taken along x-axis. In the above graph, the most profitable level of output is at the point where the LMC curve intersects the MR curve from below. The SMC curve passes through this point. At this level of output OM, the SAC curve must be tangent to the LAC curve. Now we come to the important concept of monopoly price discrimination. What is monopoly price discrimination? It is where the monopolist charges different prices for different customers. So we have an example of dumping, which is a type of price discrimination wherein a monopolist sells a portion of his output in a foreign market at a low price and remaining output at a high price in the home market. And this is possible only when the elasticities of demand in the two markets are different. When the price is high, it is usually when the market is less elastic, and price is low when the market is more elastic. This idea was given by Professor Joan Robinson. Then we have control of monopoly. Monopoly can be controlled by regulating monopoly prices. Taxation is an important way of controlling monopoly prices. And then tax can be lump sum or specific tax. And then we have what are the differences between perfect competition and monopoly. In perfect competition, marginal cost curve must be rising. Under monopoly, it may be rising, falling or constant. In perfect competition, the firm is a price taker, whereas under monopoly, the firm is a price maker. Under perfect competition, the demand curve or average revenue curve is perfectly horizontal to the x-axis. The AR curve is perfectly elastic, and MR curve coincides with AR. Whereas in monopoly, the AR curve slopes from left to right and MR curve is below it. In the long run, under perfect competition, firms earn only normal profits, whereas under monopoly, they can earn supernormal profits. Now we come to the concept of monopsony. Monopsony is nothing but a market situation where there is only a single buyer of a commodity. Next we come to concept of bilateral monopoly, which refers to a market situation in which a single producer faces a single buyer. Now we come to the important type of market structure, which is called as monopolistic competition. So earlier we have already covered about perfect competition, and then we studied about monopoly. Now we are coming to another type of market, which is called as monopolistic competition. It is a market situation where there are many firms selling a differentiated product. There are features of both perfect competition and monopoly in a monopolistic competition. So like in perfect competition, there is freedom of entry and exit of firms, but a certain level of monopoly power is also present in the as the firm is the only producer of that particular product. For example, we have the toothpaste industry. Pepsodent is produced by a particular company, and we have Colgate, which is produced by a particular company. So both Pepsodent and Colgate are different products, but they're similar products. So there are close substitutes, but nevertheless they're unique in their own way. So that is a good example of product differentiation. Similarly, the soap business is also a good example for monopolistic competition. So what are the features of monopolistic competition? There are a large number of sellers with relative independence. There is product differentiation. There is freedom of entry and exit of firms. Demand is elastic, but not too elastic. Patent rights and trademarks promote product differentiation. Advertisements promote product differentiation. So how do we understand the equilibrium and monopolistic competition? They can be understood in a certain way, but by making certain assumptions. Like when sellers are independent and each is a monopolist in his own sphere, then products are differentiated. No two firms enter the industry. Demand curve or average revenue curve is elastic. Short-term cost curves of each firm differ from each other. Factor services are in perfect elastic supply for the product in question. Now we understand the shortened equilibrium of monopolistic competition. In graph 5.6, we see the monopolistic competitive firm is able to make supernormal profits. And now we go on to the next one, where we have in graph 5.7, we have losses when the shortened average variable cost and the shortened average total cost are together, which form the shortened average cost, SAC, which is when it is above the shortened average revenue. So that is when it is losses. So when SAC curve is below SAR, then we have profits, supernormal profits, and but we have losses when the cost is more. Now we come to the concept of long run equilibrium, where normal profits are made by the monopolistic competitive firm. Here in graph 5.8, we can observe LAR, which is long run average revenue curve, LMR, which is long run marginal revenue curve. We have LMC curve, which is long run marginal cost curve, and LAC, which is long run average cost curve. Ideal output and excess capacity. Marshall, R.F. Khan, Harrod and Castles considered the ideal output of a monopolistic firm to be the output produced at the minimum long-run average cost, and the ideal plant size as one giving rise to short-run average cost curve tangent to the long-run average cost curve at the lattice minimum point. In other words, we have the important concept of excess capacity explained in the graph 5.9, wherein we have the LAC curve tangential to the AR curve at a particular point, and we have minimum LAC curve. And this difference between the production at minimum LAC and the output, normal output, which is Q1 minus Q is equal to excess capacity. So excess capacity is nothing but the difference between ideal output and the output obtained at long run equilibrium. Next, according to Chamberlain, excess capacity is because of free entry of firms and absence of price competition. Next, we have the concept of oligopoly. It is a type of market situation in which there are few firms selling homogeneous or differentiated products. It is also known as competition among few. Okay, so we have like example aluminum industry, cement industry, copper industry, and we have imperfect oligopoly, which is found among producers of consumer goods like automobiles, cigarettes, etc. So what are the characteristics of oligopoly? Interdependence, advertisement, and competition. When all firms produce the same product, it is called pure oligopoly. When they produce differentiated products, it is called as imperfect or differentiated oligopoly. So we have a particular thing called squeezy kinked demand curve, wherein we have rigidity of prices, and therefore this is the end of the subject of oligopoly, where oligopoly also consists of collusive oligopoly, which are cartels of independent firms within the same industry, and we have non-collusive oligopoly, and we have the case of duopoly, in which there are only two sellers, and the first is Carnot's model and the second is Chamberlain's model. Thus comes the end of the study of market structures